Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today, welcome back an old friend of the show, and that is Robbie from Gods Unchained. So, I think it was over 2 years ago we did best projects in gaming. Gods Unchained was one of them. They're very early stage, and now it's grown. I think you guys have been number one on and off for the most used NFT or transactions on chain, whatever it is. I'll let you explain those metrics, but you guys have been very popular, and you're killing it. You're doing a great job. So, welcome back, and congrats on everything, Robbie.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. It's really good to be here, and likewise.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for those that haven't maybe seen our first interview, what's the 60-second pitch on what is Gods Unchained?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Gods Unchained is our attempt to bring the magic of real-world trading to the convenience of a digital card game. So, think Hearthstone meets Magic the Gathering. And when we first got into the blockchain space, we knew that this was the magical game to build because I remember growing up playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering, and people loved not just playing the game, they loved collecting and trading cards, and for real money too. And you could get a Black Lotus or a rare early edition card that turned out to be super valuable down the track. And I think there is no better example of the benefits that NFTs and non-fungible tokens can bring to gaming than a trading card game. It's a native fit. Now we've been through a lot of development with Gods Unchained, and there's still a lot more to go. But really our goal is we want to make this one of the biggest trading card games in the world. We want it to redefine what asset ownership means and be a beacon of what that can be. And to help do that, we've brought on people such as Chris Clay, the former game director of Magic the Gathering Arena, and really have just put a ton of effort into making it mainstream. Obviously, the biggest thing holding it back right now is scalability and gas fees on Ethereum, which is why we've been building ImmutableX as well.
Yes, ImmutableX. So we've covered a lot of these scaling solutions on the channel. We're going to get into that in a sec as well. I'll just bring the website up quickly for those people at home who haven't seen it. But these days the graphics are fantastic, and it's a digital card game. For those of you at home that aren't gamers, you're kind of seeing now where you're playing the cards, and all of a sudden you've got the animation, the bells and the whistles, and it's just exciting. And I think the rarity side of things is the game changer when we talk about collecting. And I don't know, Robbie, is there any examples in the past of maybe when a game had an item that got really popular, and then down the track you find out the game company just created another million of those because they were selling so much in these trading markets, and that's kind of what this is solving. But is there any interesting stories you've got?
Yeah, there are many. So I think a couple of interesting ones is one, EVE Online, which is one of the largest space MMORPGs in the world. They haven't done anything bad by their users, but the interesting thing is they have a collection of power users who are they so need the economy to be basically transparent and then to know what's going on, that they send a delegation of 4 to 5 players to the company's headquarters every year to see what code and changes are being made to the economy, to basically inspect what's going to go on. They're literally buying tickets and flying across for those transparency reasons, which makes you realize something's pretty broken. And then the other example I go to is Valve with their trade lock for Counter-Strike Go. So CSGO, massive item skin marketplace, and you had this basically multi-$100 million company built on top of it called OpSkins. Yeah. Overnight, that company was killed by a single change that Valve did, which was basically a trade lock. You couldn't trade an item more than once every week. And that's ridiculous. There's a third-party company building on an economy to make things more valuable to people, and with impunity, the developer can just kind of shut things off and destroy a business overnight. And now that business is kind of turned into wax. So yeah, there are many circumstances of this happening, or people even refer to it as something as basic as power creep in video games, where game devs keep issuing newer and newer, sexier items, so they can keep kind of milking their customers for money.
Power creep, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
There you go. I haven't heard that before. Again, for people at home that aren't familiar with Valve, it's like an interface or a website that you kind of log into, and you can download games these days. You don't have to buy the CD. But what Robbie's saying is that they changed the rules on you overnight, where you might have been buying different guns and clothes and whatnot, and then they say, oh, you can only trade an item once a week. Because the marketplace was heating up and customers were making too much money and they weren't, or like what was going on there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can't speakers to the mind of the Valve executives doing the move. I think it was a few reasons. One was they just weren't happy that a third party was taking this value and kind of building this essentially ecosystem that didn't live on Steam, which is at the end of the day, all of these aggregators, they're trying to build walled gardens where they can own their ecosystem and then raise rates on people. It's what Apple's doing with their closed ecosystem. You get the benefit of amazingly vertically integrated technology, but the downside is nothing's interoperable, and they can basically raise the prices on you at any moment. Only recently have we seen fee compression pressure come as the Epic Store comes out against Apple, and Apple having to reduce it for the first $1 million of revenue or whatever, which accounts for a 2% reduction in their bottom line.
Yeah, I think just like zooming right out, big picture stuff, just blockchain in general. I think people have finally got their head around this concept of like Bitcoin and money and versus the banks and not being in control and whatnot. But I think this year, just in the past few months, people have started to understand this second concept of what Ethereum is or what decentralized ledgers are. And everything when the internet got set out and built was kind of exciting. Possibilities were endless. But what's happened is just everything's become siloed, where, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or these gaming companies that get to decide what happens. And all of a sudden now we have the opportunity where all the users are the ones that own the network and make the rules. It's not, one person or one company. And so I really just think that this has clicked when people see deplatforming or the gamers are learning about what's just happened. Artists, we even joke about the adult entertainment industry. There's some good crypto projects there, and it's just anything that cuts out that middleman and stops the siloing is beautiful for these ledgers. So, do you have just any thoughts about all that?
Yeah, I do. So I think what we're seeing this year is a couple of things. One is we're seeing the rise in institutional interest in hard money as a potential new reserve currency. So I think that's one angle. But then two, and perhaps this is why ETH has retained and slightly even improved its peg against Bitcoin, is we're seeing real adoption of decentralized smart contracts, both through DeFi and also simply through Ethereum permits non-fungible tokens. This isn't anything complex. It just allows the fundamental value proposition of crypto, which is hard cap money supply, sensitive resistance, and self-custody, to be extended to all kinds of digital assets, i.e. gaming, art, rather than just fungible currencies. So really it's the home of that. And absolutely, I see that it is inevitable one day that people will live huge amounts of their lives in some form of virtual environment. Maybe that's fully immersive VR and we're spending 24 hours a day in it, Matrix style. Maybe it's just augmented reality. But either way, virtual goods are basically going to become much more important parts of our lives. And the infrastructure which underpins that has to be open and secure. I don't want it to be owned by Facebook. Certainly I don't want it to be owned by a centralized actor. It has to be infrastructure which allows people to self-actualize and live meaningful economic lives in those new realities. And that's what we're doing here today. That's what this will turn into.
And I think it's interesting when someone like Jack Dorsey actually comes out and says that we're helping build a decentralized Twitter. So how have the game companies reacted to this? Are they like, oh no, I'm getting disrupted, our profits are going? I'm sure there's some people like that. But then there's others like yourself that are like, hey, this is good for all the users and it's not necessarily about how profitable you can be or whatever. So what's the reaction been like from different people?
It's a good question. Look, at the end of the day, business is not an altruistic thing. It's people are looking to make money. You have to make it more profitable or people won't come on board. Now, the way you do that through a classic disruption technique is you make it so pressing that the incumbent has to change, that Apple's tool has to reduce their fees. Otherwise, they're subject to, in some instances, regulatory or otherwise consumer pressure that leads to a lowering of their bottom line. So I'm not going to pretend that everything is altruistic. It's just crypto has figured out a way to coordinate incentives such that it can be better for more people. And that can form a better business model. In gaming, this is the same thing. The play here is we want to change what it means to own an asset from a scammy license agreement. But frankly, you don't own it at all. It's a rental agreement. You can't sell it. You have no rights. They can do whatever they want with it in impunity, to something that is real. you know that when you buy something, you're going to have certain rights over the future. And that's what it comes down to. It doesn't come down to people knowing it's built on a blockchain. It comes down to users knowing this is what I get if I purchase this particular thing. And I think when blockchain goes mainstream, that's where it will have to be. People won't even need to know that it runs on Ethereum or a layer 2 or whatever particular implementation of this it is.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good segue. So you guys were pretty good in terms of scaling from the outset. When CryptoKitties was congesting Ethereum, I believe you guys were even around at that same time, and you were doing a lot of trading. So what was going on there? Is there some things that are off chain, or was it always
good memory.
early versions of the scaling solution? Do you want to tell us the sort of timeline of the scaling solution?
Yeah. Look, the first law of scaling, I think, is only put what you need in the blockchain. So definitely not game logic. We may not be there for a very long time until blockchain can support something like that. Perhaps not ever, because to put game logic, it's thousands of state updates a second. Even with the best scaling technology, it can't support one game, let alone many. Yeah. But the first thing is knowing what to put on. And we decided with Gods Unchained, what people really care about is asset ownership. The game's logic is all centralized, it's like a regular game, but at the end of the day, you own those cards. You can trade them just like a physical game. Yeah. But then, we had to do a bunch of other things. So, our genius CTO, Alex, basically invented a compression algorithm for NFTs on Ethereum that's now widely used when we were minting our first batch of Gods Unchained cards. And in fact, when we did our first ever sale way back in, halfway through 2018, it was at the peak of the F-Coin exchange launch, if you remember that, where they were incentivizing basically really high gas fees. So I think gas was above like 100 for that 2-month period. And that's why we had to do it. So really necessity has been the mother of invention around the scalability stuff. But there's only so much clever optimization you can do at the mainnet without fundamentally doing some improvement, whether that's a layer 2 or whatever it is. And that's, I think, how we came to our decision today.
Yeah, so I think in the past few months, they've been rolled out widely. We've spoken about every different solution a lot on the channel. It's always a trade-off. And so do you want to talk about what ImmutableX is, your scaling solution, what it's good for, what it's not good for, what the trade-offs are?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, maybe I'll give the context, which is, when we were designing this solution, we knew we didn't want to compromise on 2 things. One was security. At no point in time could we ever compromise either our users' assets. So we always wanted it to be self-custodial, or B, the actual security of the network on which it lived. The whole point of doing this is it's decentralized. There's no point if you're using a fake decentralized solution that's just 10 centralized operators running a sidechain or whatever you have. So we knew right from the start we wanted something which really leveraged Ethereum's security. And second was we wanted something that would be the home of trading, that was marketable, because that's ultimately what matters. Is people have to use it. It has to be the thing where all the activity is, which is frankly why even if another blockchain develops better tech than Ethereum, I'm still pretty short-term bullish on it, because it has all of the users. It has all of the capital. It has all of these DeFi projects hopping on it. It means that it can iterate and develop, and there's a bunch of this pressure to improve the core protocol, which is why we're seeing slow but very steady progress on ETH2. So I think that was what formed this choice. And then for us, the natural solution was a layer 2 or a roll-up. What does that mean? It means a few things. One, it means you're inheriting the security of Ethereum or whatever blockchain the layer 2 is built on, in this case, Ethereum. That was really big for us. It meant we were pro-ETH, which we love to be. We were helping accrue value to that and scale that. And most importantly, it meant users' assets were safe. It meant there was nothing we could ever do to take them from users. And also that the blockchain was a resilient one. It was very expensive to attack, which Ethereum is, unlike many other layer 1s out there. So that was kind of our primary thing. Now, in looking at roll-up solutions, there are a couple. So you have kind of an optimistic roll-up or a zero-knowledge roll-up. After even just quick analysis, it became pretty obvious to us that a zero-knowledge roll-up was the way to go. And that's just because the proofs in zero-knowledge roll-ups are validity proofs rather than fraud proofs. There's a couple of minute differences in security and stuff, but the main difference is when you upload a validity proof to the blockchain, your assets can be withdrawn instantly. When you upload a fraud proof in an optimistic roll-up to the blockchain, there's a 1 to 2 week waiting period where you have to wait for someone to issue a fraud challenge. That's how the security is retained. For ERC20 based projects like Synthetics, this works well. You can build liquidity bridges and all sorts of clever financial engineering so users can actually get those assets earlier. But that doesn't work for NFTs. I can't loan you a, one of a kind Gods Unchained card. All the assets are completely unique. So you really need this serial knowledge roll up. Then it became, well, who do we pick? And pretty obviously to us, the answer was Starkware, who are the market leader in proofs. They write Stark proofs, which are quantum resistant. And they were willing to work with us building this dedicated solution for NFTs.
Fantastic. So yeah, I think for people, the way to remember it is optimistic. You are being optimistic that nothing bad has happened, and you got a 2 week window for someone to challenge. A little bit like in the Lightning Network, you might have heard when people go to settle and close their channel. You've got to agree on it. So that's kind of the moving from layer 1 chain to these other chains. That's the problem that people are trying to solve at the moment. So. How is that? What stage is it at? Is it fully rolled out? Recently we've seen Synthetics go live with I think it's the last version. They're still calling it a testnet on mainnet, but we're very close to these things being used.
Yeah. I think I would get in trouble with my team if I gave any specific dates, but I will say we're very close. We're very close.
Cool. And what sort of changes is this going to bring around? Like real world examples. What are people paying now? What's it going to get to? What are the sort of savings, improvements, efficiencies?
Precisely, and this is what really excites me. If you want to trade a Gods Unchained card right now, or create a wearable NFT, or whatever you want to do, it's going to cost you, let's say, 50 gwei, 100 gwei, $10 to $30. It's insane. It's literal insanity. And this is part of the reason why digital art NFTs have been so huge is you don't mind paying $10, $20 to trade an NFT if it's worth 10,000, if it's a valuable piece of art. And this is why also the financial and DeFi markets have been relatively unaffected. They're high value, they're fairly cheap to trade because they're ERC20 tokens, which means you can trade 1 million ERC20 tokens for the same cost as trading one. With NFTs, you trade 1 million NFTs, you're paying 1 million times the gas as trading one. It's completely untenable right now. And all of these great things about, blockchain we want to do for Gods Unchained, such as play to earn, we can't do. It's terrible. And our whole goal with Gods Unchained has been, how can we scale this game? How can we actually bring it to the masses and have it be the Trojan horse for blockchain? And I'm not talking about having 10,000 DAO on crypto and being the biggest crypto project. I'm talking about real game numbers, hundreds of thousands, and profitable, return on ad spend on mass marketing. That all requires this invisible scalability and being able to create these assets. Yeah. So really what we're looking at is taking those $10, $20, $30 gas costs and making them zero. And the reason we can do that is the roll-up tech. So you have your assets in our smart contract. You still own them at all times. You perform a trade. It's no longer a transaction on the mainnet. You're just signing a transaction. We then take a bunch of those signatures, let's say thousands, representing thousands of trades, send them over to our friends at Starkware. They wrap them up in their incredible proof called a Stark proof, and we upload that to the Ethereum main chain. From the moment it hits the main chain, the asset ownership is changed, and all of those trades have occurred. And at no point do we ever compromise user security. It basically inherits all the properties of Ethereum. So, a ton of engineering effort has gone into this. It will feel like, I can tell you, it will feel like magic. And so we're very, very excited for what this does for the low value NFTs, of which there are tons of for gaming, in making that scalable. The second thing is not only zero gas to trade, it's zero gas to create NFTs. And we call this, minting. And I know a bunch of our partners on the gaming side are basically insanely excited about this because you can't do it at all. If we were trying to do play to earn right now as Gods Unchained, it'd be losing us literally millions of dollars a year. It's insane.
Yeah, I think we did a tutorial how to create NFTs on XDAI because it is just radically expensive to try and do it on the main chain as well. That's all really exciting. I just think it is going to blow people away. Just such a level of improvement. It's going to go from feeling really clunky, like when you used to use, was it IDEX and the really early exchanges, those dexes, and people were like, what is going on? Click, wait a minute, click again. We're going to have a seamless experience, because probably one of the reasons why retail hasn't really arrived in this crypto cycle so far, because it is almost exclusionary, whether you're doing a swap on Uniswap or trying to play a game. People don't know what they're doing, and they're trying to use $5 or $10 to buy something that's $5, or they might want to buy $50 of tokens. It's just been this big barrier to entry that I can't wait to see it dissolve and
Totally
just
right.
take ETH to the next level. And probably the other thing you touched on there was the governance. So more and more we're seeing that whether it's 10 nodes or 21 with EOS and governance clashes, and now Dan Laramie's walked away, for example, personality attached to that blockchain. There's more and more of these little nuances that are coming out, and people are going, it actually does need to be decentralized for all sorts of stuff.
And this is my favorite thing about Ethereum. And now I love Vitalik. I think he's a genius, but he could die tomorrow or move to another blockchain. And touch what he doesn't. I hope he has a long and immortal life. But Ethereum wouldn't die because of that. It's really truly decentralized in every layer of the stack, whether that's the Geth client you're running, or the number of basically miners operating at every piece of the stack. They're encouraging a reduced reliance on a central piece of software actor. There are very few other blockchains which are at that level.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I interviewed Vitalik for a documentary recently, and he was telling me that he's moving to a new blockchain. It was called ETH2, though. There you go. There you go. That's a dad joke for you, Robbie.
That is. You have my heart racing for a second. It's a secret.
What else on the roadmap? You're talking about a marketplace as well. So is this like competition? We've seen Rarible, OpenSea. What's the other one that's one of a kind as well that always escapes me?
There's Super Rare, Nifty Gateway. There's
Super
a bunch
Rare.
of people
Super
doing these
Rare,
There's Zora Foundation. I mean, there's a bunch of actually really exciting projects, and they're all kind of touching at different layers of the stack. We don't want to compete with any of them. I want users to trade wherever they want to trade. There's a ton of effort going into making those experiences amazing. What we want to do is be the protocol powering scalability if those people want to trade on Ethereum. And lots of people will use multiple things. I'm sure OpenSea will use, they'll be the front-end aggregator. So if you want to trade on Flow, you want to trade on whatever, you can do it. But we want to be the people helping make sure that if you're trading an asset and it's on Ethereum, you're trading with the full security benefits of Ethereum, getting zero gas fees, and you're getting rewarded while you're doing it.
Do I have to still open a channel like I do with a few of these other technologies, and that's still a once-off gas fee, or are you guys subsidizing that, or what happens there?
Yeah, so the asset has to live inside ImmutableX, but that's the main cost. And I mean, we work with any wallet, for instance. So really, we're trying to make it as low friction as possible.
Okay, fantastic. We sort of just touched on adoption there. Is there anything else that you see as a barrier other than what we just touched on for the next wave of adoption and the bull market cycle? Some people are saying, we've topped, that's it. I think we've got a long way to go in this cycle.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, I don't want to sound crazy, but my long-term price targets are $1 million for Bitcoin and $100,000 for Ethereum over the next 5 years. And at that level, Bitcoin is only as valuable as gold. So it's only hit the gold value prop, let alone kind of reserve currency or whatever have you. Now, Ethereum is an entirely different ball game. This could be the way economies of the future run. This could be the way logic of the future runs. And this is a bit of my point, because I don't know how things will play out, but which blockchain will win. But ultimately, it's the activities and the networks being performed upon it that are going to generate the underlying technological development. So I almost think that tech is less important than where is the activity, what are people using, and what is basically secure, because you need that at every stage. So yeah, I think in terms of hurdles, I would love to see the day, and I hope it's Gods Unchained, where we have 1 million people a day playing a game that uses NFTs, and they have no idea that it uses NFTs under the hood. And there are real transactions occurring on Ethereum. I think that would be a very powerful moment for blockchain, because it would basically dwarf the DAO of every single other application. And I think that's the moment where we'll see real traction start to take off, because it's a genuine use case in a mainstream application.
Yeah, cool. Recently, we had a lot of our followers start to get excited, and they unwrapped packs for the first time of the Cogs and the Red Fox Labs guys.
Yeah.
Have you got any cool stories about some of the rarer Gods Unchained cards? I mean, people love hearing these things about the collectibles and what sort of player numbers. Were you a very small community, and is that already grown very rapidly, or yeah, where are you at with all that?
Yeah, we've doubled our user base over the past 6 months. So we've been really, I mean, I would say the work we're doing on Gods Unchained has been building the machine so we're ready to scale. And obviously we can't scale without ImmutableX because we just can't unlock those fundamental value propositions yet.
Yeah.
People can't even trade. But it's all about how do we actually increase the core engine. So when we do turn on the massive marketing funnels, whether that's, essentially, game scale by performance marketing, buying Facebook ads, buying mobile ads. When we turn that on, and it's all about, well, how much money can you make per user? So we want to make sure our retention's great, our game is great for that. So I think, yeah, that's been the main play. In terms of magic moments, nothing kind of fills me more with happiness than, and as a kid growing up, you see all these FIFA unboxing and like literally there's that guy on YouTube who does FIFA unboxings, which millions of people view. And it's because of that dopamine rush. It's because of the excitement of it. You just search Gods Unchained unboxing into YouTube and you can literally see these amazing experiences where people unbox, a 1 of 10 card or a 1 of a kind card. I wish there was a recording of the Mythic unboxing, which is the 1 of the 1. I would have loved to see their face when they kind of, essentially unbox $30,000 or $60,000. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's one of the coolest things. I mean, my first magic moment with Ethereum was using Ethereum because I was like, well, and I'm not a gambler, but how cool is that in 10 lines of code, you can render redundant hundreds of billions of dollars of effort of a government trying to regulate an industry and ensure its payouts are compliant. It's got sufficient capital to pay people out. That showed me the power of Ethereum literally back in like the end of 2015 or 2016, whenever it came out.
For people that don't know, Ether is just 10 lines of code, like Robbie said, roll a dice, and you've got a 1 in 6 chance of, 6xing your money sort of thing. And it was just all on chain and just those little concepts.
I don't want them to sue me. I'm sure it's more than 10 lines of code, but it's like you could do a rudimentary implementation really simply.
Okay, cool. Not many of us are coders, so we won't hold you to that. But it's just those little concepts that people go, oh, wow, like there's no company, there's no casino there's no license. This is anywhere in the world, just to roll a virtual dice. Yeah.
It's so cool. Yeah.
Any other of your favorite projects? Is Gods Unchained interested in DeFi? Like, there's so many ways where these sort of cross over, or they're also, they can interact with each other. DeFi Legos, as we call it. Is there any integrations coming? Are you going to have a big DeFi bank in the middle of Gods Unchained soon, or what's going on?
Yeah. Stay tuned. We are planning something big. In everything we do, we're building it for the long term, especially in Gods Unchained. So we didn't want to rush into a project because there was a bunch of hype around DeFi. We want to build things that will fundamentally improve the experience of playing the game and the retention. Now, that being said, there are amazing innovations in DeFi that I think are really cool. I love the idea of an ownership token where players can effectively, own a piece of the game. And really what we're building is an economy. And I think this is the interesting thing about blockchain-based games is that just in the same way you can't have a proper form of money without blockchain, in my honest opinion. You can't have something which stands the test of time because it dies. The incentives of humans go wrong. You get M1, you get massive inflation. And it's not even, it is in their short-term incentives to do that. So things just inexorably go wrong unless you have some kind of hard capped money at the core of it, backing everything. I think the same thing actually happens with game items. And so we've been doing a lot of deep, basically research into, well, how do we make this economy incredibly sustainable and also one that fuels a growth loop for the game? So yeah, stay tuned and we will hopefully have some things to share in the short run.
Yeah. When I hear about all this stuff, sometimes I think about almost like Inception, where people might go into Decentraland, go into a virtual world and go to the New Nuggets news building, for example, and meet up and then go play like a digital game, play Gods Unchained, and you just like layer upon layer of these different virtual worlds. So That's probably what excites me most. Like 12 months ago, when people thought Ethereum was dead, here we are talking about like scaling and layers of virtual worlds. And 12 months out, there'll be another big industry. Like no one really saw art coming, and all those artists didn't realize they're going to be selling their art. Like Theosius, the young girl who's like moved out of home now, and she used to be poor, and like all this because she literally worked out how to sell NFTs. Like it's just amazing what's already happening.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the next 12 months or 24 months. Is there
Yeah.
anything that
And obviously we'll see a normalization period, but I agree. I think it's tremendously exciting. And one of these really interesting hypotheses is that in the same way, if you had a Mona Lisa and you had a perfect replica of the Mona Lisa, this one's worth, I don't even know if you can count it, $500 million. This one's worth $5,000, $10,000 at best for a really high quality replica. In the same way, we're seeing this come to fruition in digital art, where the original NFT holds all the value. And even if you copy it, it's just accruing value to the original IP, because that is the one you can prove was the original, was the original provenance of the creator.
Yeah. And so as well, for people to understand, you can't like copy a Gods Unchained NFT and then go to play it in the game. Like there's actual barriers that prevent stuff like that happening. But also if you have a like a virtual base and you go to Decentraland and you want to hang up virtual art, people can see on chain like that you didn't actually buy that thing if you're trying to like cheat the system, and then people go, oh this guy's like making frauds and whatever. And so there's kind of, I know what people are saying where maybe you can copy an NFT or something, but there's it's going to have the same issues in the real world. If you want to hang fake art all through your house, like sooner or later people are going to realize. And yeah, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how it turns out. It's a pretty radical proposition, this idea of digital art. The much simpler proposition is that we'll simply see tokenization of existing art, i.e. you can have a token which represents a piece of art in the real world and you could fractionalize that. But this is obviously the crypto native version, and I'm interested to see if this, brief moment of intense activity translates into a real period of growth of the next couple of years. I hope it does.
Yeah. Are there any other concepts or industries that you think are next that are coming to blockchain, crypto, Ethereum that people are missing? Anything in particular?
Yes. So one of them that really excites me is NFTs application to finance. We saw the first taste of this last year with YFI issuing insurance NFTs. Which makes sense because an insurance contract is based on a unique set of circumstances. It basically requires a unique financial asset as opposed to just a fungible token. What other areas of finance could be represented through a non-fungible token? I'm fascinated by that. I also think we'll see eventually, and I don't know the time frame, over the next couple of years, I very much suspect we'll see tokenization of everything digital. Whenever the value of an asset lives inside the digital nature of the token, which is this stuff like digital art or video game items been talking about, or even the YFI financial NFT, we'll absolutely see it take off because it's inherently interoperable with the money Legos. But the remaining stuff I'm really interested in is what about relationship to real world items, to real title, to houses, all this stuff that people have been talking about for a while. At the moment, you still have to wrangle with court systems, with regulatory systems, which is why it's not the best idea. But will we see the tokenization of everything over the next decade? I think so.
Yeah, it hasn't really been solved, has it? You can get the deed to the house, and there's already projects like Real T that are doing that. But those problems of when there's a dispute, how do you resolve it? How do we trust the oracles? What happens if you own the house but it burns down and you've got you've borrowed against that house in DeFi land? So I'm not really sure if we can ever solve some of those things.
Yeah.
But there's problems.
The nice thing I think is if we do, all of the decentralized finance, the derivative products, the options, the futures, the indexes are instantly plug-inable. And that's what's so powerful is, in ImmutableX, people will be able to create an index token of Gods Unchained cards. They'll be able to take the 380 cards from the Genesis set and pop it into an ERC20 index token. And then you just effectively create an ETF that can go list on Coinbase, on Binance. It can be used as collateral for your DeFi. Yeah. This kind of open money Legos, as the bankless guys coin, is so powerful.
Oh, absolutely. We've spoken about it at length. In Decentraland, they had like a soccer tournament and they won a gold trophy, and it was minted from Digex gold tokens. So there's just possibilities endless. But any call to actions, Robbie? I'll put the website links and all that down below. But any final messages for people at home?
Yeah. Two. One, please come check us out at immutable.com. Sign up. We'll have some very important things to send your way. And two, if you're a developer, please reach out directly. There's a section on the website. We're doing a grants program. I think we've spoken to most of the people in the place, but we're really excited effectively to scale Ethereum and to deal with users' interests at the heart of it. And most importantly, to make sure that we can finally deliver on the value that we originally saw in some of these games. I mean, the thing that frustrates me is in Gods Unchained, when you're building a deck, you should be able to instantly buy a card in the context of making a deck off a marketplace for zero gas. That's when these kind of features come to life. And so I'm really excited to be able to basically have that infrastructure deployed and start seeing it being used and affecting real life metrics.
Yeah. Just quickly, bonus question for those of you that have stayed to the end. Recently, we've seen a lot of the layer one based protocols gone from being like ETH killers or competing to almost like complementing or saying, hey, we're interoperable. Do you think that, are you aggressively going to try and get everyone, or do you think, Solana, Cardano, whatever it is, do you think there's a big scope for all these other chains, or do you think that it will just resolve to mainly Ethereum and the scaling solutions?
I can't predict the future. Right now, I'm betting on ETH. I think there are some interesting other alternatives. And I think the narrative of them turning from ETH killers into ETH interoperable is less a reflection of the truth and more a political posture, given the increasing dominance of Ethereum.
Okay, yeah. Good answer. I just can't wait. Every day is so exciting. So we'll get to find out probably what happened.
It's fun being
next
in the bull
week. There'll be
market.
another chapter. But Robbie, I've really enjoyed that. Hope you guys have at home. Check out Gods Unchained, and we'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Alex.